Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, Tom Laidlaw, the former NHL defenseman for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And we are the Laidlaw and Allen Report. And Tom, a lot to unpack this week, starting with the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is a team that I simply just don't understand. I think a lot of us look at that talent up front, and then, I compare it to what's going on in Edmonton. In Edmonton, they've got Connor McDavid and Draisaitl doing their thing, and in Toronto, there's a lot of talented guys with Austin Matthews, and of course Mitch Marner is out right now, but they've got Nylander. There's a lot going on there. But when you look at this 9-9 record that the Maple Leafs have, that's not what we expected. We expected them to be a dominant team. Right now, they're not even in a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference.
Well, and to me, the heat goes on the coach there too. When I watch the games and they're talking about how bad the penalty killing is, how bad the power play is, and a team that, like you said, has got a ton of talent, is underperforming, just not playing like a team. That goes to coaching. And I know Mike Babcock's had a fantastic track record. People always talked about what a great coach he is about getting the most out of his players. But I'm watching that team now, and that's the exact opposite I'm seeing. He's like getting the least out of his players. You see a lot of teams with less talent that are getting a lot more done. And maybe that's part of the issue. We've talked about that before, where a team that is so talented just thinks they have to step on the ice and play, and they'll be okay. And they're certainly not okay right now. Listen, I know Mike Babcock has had a great history in the past. And part of that, like I said, is getting the most out of his players. But the game has changed, too. A lot more younger players coming in. Maybe he's hardened in his ways and he doesn't want to change it all. But it's just not working there right now. And again, I'm pointing at the coach. I mean, I hate to do that. Like I've said in the past, I think coaches get too much credit when they win and they get too much blame when they lose. But when I see special teams not doing well, like the Leafs right now, I think that a lot of that is coaching.
Well, it's hard for me to disagree with you. I'm usually a defender of Babcock. I've seen him for a long time, and I think, he does a good job preparing his teams. But, I like Frederik Andersen in net. I think he's a good goalie. And then I look at the Maple Leafs numbers here this morning. I looked it up, 3.41 goals against per game, and that's not all Freddie Andersen. Yeah. As you said, that's really the team's defensive play. That's ranked 23rd out of 31 NHL teams. And Ovechkin said it not long ago that they've got to play differently if they want to be a successful team, particularly in the postseason. Mike Babcock agreed. I think Drew Doughty said the same. I mean, like everybody is saying, the Maple Leafs need to play a different brand of hockey. Well, to me, that is on the coach. That is on Mike Babcock to sort of lay down the law. And, you see that all the time. Every time there's a coaching change, a team, I shouldn't say every time, but more often than not, the team goes through a period where they're a more competitive team. And we've talked about this in the past. A lot of it has to do with the clean slate that everybody has. Everybody's on their best behavior. They're trying to get more ice time. But it also has to do with the fact that the one area where a coach can have the most impact is on the defensive side of the game. And as you said, if we're going to start pointing fingers here, I'm going to point them at Mike as well. I think something has to be done. I mean, it's like one of those things where you just got to announce on a Tuesday, all right, we're going to relearn this game. We're going to relearn it from the defensive side of it. And, if they, at some point, you're too far down the season. And I think you could make a major change at this point in the season, but at the midway point, it's much more difficult.
Yeah. Well, and to me, like one of the keys there, Kevin, unfortunately, we agree to each other too much right now. I like to argue with you much better. But one of the keys for me is when I see bad penalty killing on a team, and that was one of my things that I had to do well when I played was kill penalties. And I think so much of that, like you typically it is your less talented players are going to be killing penalties. And they're successful because they learn to play as a unit. They learn to sacrifice, learn to block shots. They learn to pressure at the right times. They learn if one guy is pressuring, then the other three penalty killers have to pressure as well, so that the guy with the puck doesn't have somebody to pass to. All those little things. So when I see a team that's bad in penalty killing, I just think, well, they're not prepared. I know there's other factors that go into it, but so much of that is in the control of the coaching staff to prepare them to practice penalty killing so they know how to do it properly. And it's got to be as a unit. It isn't just saying, okay, you've got to work hard killing penalties or you got to block shots killing penalties. It's working as a unit together. And that comes from the coaching staff. That's got to start practice. It's over and over. It's pregame preparation. And that, when I see that happen, to your point, that's a bad defensive team. They're not coached properly when that's happening.
I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, and we'll come back to the Maple Leafs. But you're talking about penalty killing. I've been meaning to ask you this. I saw recently everybody was a big long discussion on the art of penalty killing, and it occurred to me that the way we talk about penalty killing now is different, and I wondered if the way we kill them is different because of that. And the talk about it was how many blocked shots you now have to have in order to successfully kill a penalty, and the whole conversation I heard between people talking about this was about, blocking shots and getting out on the guy and so forth. Was there that great emphasis back when you were playing about that in order to stop or to have an effective penalty kill, you got to block shot after shot after shot?
Well, the rules have changed. So blocking shot was important, but blocking shot was almost like a last resort. It was more important to clear out the front of the net so the goalkeeper was stopping the shots, right? And it was also important that it was more the pressure up ice so the teams couldn't enter your zone. It was pressure in the defensive zone. So when a player is bobbling the puck or turning his back to the play, you had to pressure right away. And that's what I talk about. It's not just one guy pressuring. It's one guy pressuring, then all three other players taking away any passes that puck carrier then has. So that's where I talk about really working as a group together. And when I watch sometimes right now, the best penalty killing teams do that. It's pressure. They don't sit back in a box very often. But that has changed. And I think largely because of the rules, because now, like, it was a war zone in front of the net before. You were taught in front of the net, it was, you bring down the Sherwood Forest on them and clear out the front of the net. And you can't do that anymore. So it's maybe you can block them out a little bit, but that's why blocking shots is a lot more important now.
It's when you think about it, it's really amazing when a team has a power play percentage in the 20s these days. Yeah. When I look in front of the net, because, in the old days, you really could move guys out. You could just bulldoze everybody out of there. And you can't do that at all. It's a wonder the goalie ever sees the puck. Like, there's so much traffic in front of the net that I wonder how they see it, to be honest. And yet, we still have teams that are very effective on the power play, or at least, in the 20s in terms of power play percentage.
Yeah, definitely. It is stuff. You're right. You watch the replays now, and they show some great shots where guys score goals just by shooting. They're really just throwing it to the top corner because they know the goaltender is going to go down and try to cover the bottom of the net when he can't see the puck. And a lot of goals are scored, just not luck. They know what they're doing. But some great tip-ins, too. Austin Matthews had a tip-in the other day. I think he was in Toronto, and I think the puck was going I remember Ray Ferraro was doing the color, and he was going, that puck's got to be going 8 feet wide, and it was when they showed the replay. And Austin Matthews was able to reach out and pull it back with his stick to tip it in. So that was done in the past, but a lot more of that now. So that front net net front play is a lot more important than it was in the past.
All right, let's shift back to Babcock because, we've talked about this in the past, but I think we got to keep talking about it because I think the threat is real, as we like to say. Yeah. And that is could Mike Babcock be fired? And it seems a lot more realistic now to discuss it than it was at the start of the year when people were suggesting, well, at the end of this year, they could take a hard look at whether he's the right guy for that team.
Oh, to me, listen, I'd very seriously look at firing him and firing him right now. This is a talented hockey team. You went and got John Tavares and paid him all that money. You're paying all the money to Austin Matthews coming up and Mitch Marner. You've got a great young team there. They've built a great young team. So this team's going to be good for a long time with talent. But it's not performing the way it needs to perform. And it's okay. Listen, if you're a young team and you have good nights and bad nights, and that's part of having a young hockey team, that's fine. You can accept that. But when I see a team go and play and they're listless, again, they just don't look like they know what they're doing defensively. I saw the stat the other day there where I think they're leading the league in first period goals against, so it looks like they're not prepared to play. All those things are being pointed at the coach. And to me, I think that's got to be seriously being looked at right now, whether they fire him now or in the near future.
Well, let's talk about another team that I've been disappointed with this season. Last season the Calgary Flames won 50 games. Like I think that was kind of overlooked, that how well they played last season. That's a lot of games to win in today's parity NHL. And this year, of course, they're right around 500. And in the last 2 games, they've been shut out. And I looked at their goals for, and they ranked 29th in the league at 2.52. Now, this is a team with, Johnny Gaudreau on it. This is a team with Matthew Tkachuk on it, with Monahan on it, with Giordano's on it. This is a very skilled team. And for the struggles that they've had offensively, you've got to start to look and say, what's wrong with this team? I mean, Monahan and Gaudreau. I mean, Gaudreau has 18 points. It's not like he's not been around the puck, but he's only got 5 goals. Like that's fewer than that's a pace of under 20 goals per season. Same is true of Monahan as well. So what's going on with this Flames team? Should we be concerned? I mean, there's a lot of good hockey being played in that Pacific Division, but none of it has been by the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, I wouldn't be concerned largely because those guys that you mentioned there have shown that they can do it. If they hadn't shown it in the past, if they're just good young players who really hadn't done it yet, then geez, you got to say, well, are they ever going to be able to do it? But they've shown that they can do it, so I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. I mean, listen, we talked about the San Jose Sharks, and I was one of the ones that said they're the worst team in the league at the start of the year because they weren't playing well at the start. Now they've won. Was it 5 in a row or something like that? They're on a roll. So I think it's the same thing here as Calgary. I wouldn't be overly concerned about them because, again, they've got proven goaltenders or goal scorers there, proven puck carriers, good defense. I like that team. Every team's going to go through a rough stretch. Is there a work ethic issue? Sometimes confidence too. Guys just can't score goals. All of a sudden, the more they push, the more pressure they put on themselves, they don't score. But I wouldn't be concerned. Now, listen, if it keeps going for another 5 games and not scoring any goals, then I'm worried. But I just see that team as a good offensive team, a good all-around team. I think they are the team that won 50 games last year, so I wouldn't be concerned about them.
Well, and they've scored 3 goals in 4 games, so it's not just they've been shut out,
right.
2 in a row. It's 3 and 4. But I wonder too, there's even more pressure now because Edmonton, their arch rival in Alberta. There, I mean, they're on top of their game.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You trade away James Neal there. Not that Neal was doing anything with Calgary last year, but you trade him away, and now he's scoring goals. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a point. He didn't do anything with Calgary. He wasn't a good fit there. It was clear. Yeah. But I mean, that's maybe that's where we should move next. Is right to those Edmonton Oilers. That we were talking before. Like, look, Connor McDavid is the most talented player in the league, in my opinion. And Draisaitl is right there as well in the top 5. But I think everybody thought, well, they'll cool off a little. Well, no, they're not going to cool off at all. Cool. Like they have just been such dominant performers.
Yeah. What was the game the other night? I think McDavid had 6 points and Draisaitl had 5.
Yeah.
I can't remember who they beat, but they dominated. And that was really only in the first 40 minutes. And in the last 20 minutes, they kind of, took the foot off the gas a little bit. So, I guess the old debate is, you've always talked about depth. And you compare it to basketball where you can have 1 or 2 guys that are really good and they can carry a team. In hockey, that typically has not been the case. But maybe that's different now. The game has changed so much. There isn't as much physical play. The hooking to holding isn't what it was. Maybe these guys can play that when they're young guys. So, maybe over a long season isn't going to wear them down that much. But, we haven't really seen a team be successful in the long term with just, 2 or even 3 guys really carrying it like they are right now. They're getting away with it. I would think that they would feel like they'd have to, add some more depth, but I don't know where that comes from. You got to give up things to get depth. So they're flying right now. Maybe it's a new day. The game has changed a lot. Maybe that's just the way these guys will be able to do that long term.
Yeah, but it's difficult to find guys. I agree with that, but I think that's the test of the modern general manager. Is that's part of your mandate. It's and I want to talk about them in a minute, but it's Steve Yzerman, going out and finding Robbie Fabre to come in and play on the Red Wings second line. Given the Athanasiou, somebody that has his talent base, and they work better together. And I think and he didn't. He being Yzerman didn't give up much to get that done, and I think that's what you got to do. I think Holland's mandate right now is to find those guys, the diamonds in the rough who can come in and make that team just a little bit better.
Aren't they right up against cap too?
Well, they are, but you know what? I hear that all the time. But somehow Jim Rutherford always makes it work.
No, that's true. I'm saying, here's my thought too. If they're rolling along and they're doing okay right now with what they've got, typically teams as they get closer to the trade deadline, like the Rangers did a couple of years ago, they say we're retooling now. We're going to get rid of some of these guys. We didn't want to draft picks and young players and prospects and everything. So that's when teams now are starting to unload those. So if they feel like they can get through the season or close to the trade deadline with what they've got there in Edmonton right now, that's when now you're going to be able to get some of those players that other teams are willing to say, okay, we need to give these guys up because we're not going to win right now. And now the more talent is available later on in the year. But and listen, you're right. There's no reason they can't do it now. But and the thing is, they're winning now. Why would?
But I think it's the perfect time to walk the tightrope. When you're winning and things going well, if you can just make a little subtle change, and I'd be looking now. You don't make a move just to make a move. No, that's silly. But what I'm saying is that, and knowing Ken Holland, I'm sure this is true. I'm sure he's looking at every available, player. Let's not forget that Yzerman learned from Holland, and so all the things that Yzerman does, he learned as part of the Red Wings organization when he went into management. But getting back to this Oiler group, particularly McDavid and Draisaitl, it really does remind me right now of the 1980s when you used to, if you didn't see what happened that night, the next morning, you immediately, in those days, it was the newspaper. Now you go right on the web and said, well, how many points did those guys get last night? Oh. And I love that. Like, I think that's been lost because we sort of shifted to sort of a defensive game in the NHL. And I miss the 80s when, you wanted to see what did Lemieux get last night? What did Gretzky get? How many goals did Brett Hull get when he was on that tear? And so it's fun now to have players that we can go and say, okay, well, what did Draisaitl do last night? What did McDavid do? And boy, they're just skilled players. And because that Oilers team, there were a lot of guys that could play at a really high level. On the Oilers, it really is just Draisaitl and they've got some good players. I don't want to demean them. They're talented NHL.
I know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, but there's no Curry, no Messier, no Anderson. Other than the two guys there. So I think this is exciting, and given all the misery that the Oilers fans went through, I think this is just terrific for that franchise.
It's amazing for me being the old defenseman. I sit there and I watch the night where they had 6 and 5, and the 200 points, and I think to myself, oh, come on, they're not playing well enough defensively. We could have stopped them. Back in the day we were better defensemen, all that kind of stuff. But then I watch them play and go, wow, they're pretty unstoppable. And then I think back to when I played against particularly Gretzky and Curry. And that cross ice pass, like Gretzky was one of the first guys that he would be able to. You would have Curry covered. You put your stick in the lane there, and there's no way Gretzky can make that pass. But he would make the saucer pass, have it going up in the air, and lay down perfectly flat for a one-timer for Curry, and he scores. And they're kind of like laughing at you, So I think back and say, well, I thought I had it covered then, and there's no way they could get that pass through, but they found a way to do it. And it's the same thing watching McDavid and Draisaitl too. You think to yourself, wow, come on, you got to play better defensively. But it's not that they're playing bad defensively. Those two players are just that dynamic. The speed, the hands, and and what I like about McDavid too is like he goes 100 miles an hour, but it's not like he's bobbling the puck. Like his mind and the puck is going 100 miles an hour with him. So it's not like he's out of control. It's just it's great to watch. It is funny though. I think to myself, somebody was talking the other day. I think it was Brian Burke. I saw him talk about one of the first times McDavid played against the Calgary Flames, and Giordano, who's Norris Trophy winning defenseman, when he saw McDavid wind up in his own zone and start coming out of his own zone, Giordano turned around and skated forward right away so he could get his speed going. You typically don't do that. And then NHL defenseman skates backwards. But Giordano knew how fast McDavid was. He had to turn and skate forward and then turn around and pivot and play him one-on-one. So he's a special player. I've heard a lot of stories about him before he got started. He is everything they talked about. Yeah,
the speed at which players in this league can make plays now is incredible. Yeah. Like Wayne was phenomenal, but he essentially would kind of slow the game down sometimes, and then just make it like chess. He was just smarter than everyone else in terms of because he knew what he was going to do, and you did. But did you ever? Do you remember hitting Gretzky?
Oh yeah, I remember. Well, I think the funny story is one of my first games up in Edmonton there. I think it was Carol Vadnais again, and I've told a lot of stories about Carol Vadnais. If people don't remember, he was a great defenseman in the NHL. He's passed away now, but became an assistant coach with the Rangers, and he really kind of mentored me. Like he really thought there was something special about me and took me under his wing. And we were going into Edmonton, and he said to me, "Tommy, you go out there and you hit that Gretzky tonight. You had the French accent." So I went out and hit Gretzky, hit him pretty good. I think in the offensive zone, he was coming around the boards to get a puck, and I knocked him down, hit him pretty good. And it was back in the days where Sather was coaching, and back in the Canadian rinks in those days, there's no music playing or like that. When the play ended, it was like you're in the ballet or something. It was just dead quiet, like 20,000 people didn't make a peep. And Glenn Sather stood up with one foot on the boards and one foot on the bench. He goes, "Laidlaw, you're going home in a body bag." So everybody in the building hears this, including me and my teammates. So I'm on the ice, and he taps Dave Semenko. Dave Semenko wasn't a whole lot bigger than me, but he's one of those guys that looked like he's about 10 feet tall. And at this, back then he wasn't wearing a helmet. His hair is flying all over the place. And it looks like he didn't really, but it looks like he just got out of the woods, or like there's twigs sticking out of his hair or whatever. he comes skating over to me, and I'm looking at him going, "Oh," and he can't. I mean, listen, I could fight, but this guy was a whole different category. So you can't run and hide. There's no place to go. And I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, geez, it's like a Tuesday night. I'm with the Rangers. He's with the Oilers. So it's not like a big rivalry or something. It's not like I'm playing for the Calgary Flames and he hates me. So he skated over to me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking to myself, like, he's kind of got that look in his face, like, "Oh God, do I really have to do this?" I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to be all right here. Maybe I'm just going to get a lecture here. He comes over to me. He says, "Tommy," like almost disgusted, like, "Are you going to hit Wayne anymore tonight?" And I get right up in his face, like I'm arguing with him. So my teammates see me arguing. I'm going, "Dave, if you don't want me to hit him anymore tonight, I won't hit him anymore tonight." The guys are all coming over, patting me on the pads. "Yeah, you stood up to him, Tommy. Way to go." "Yeah, sure, I stood up to him."
So what you're saying is, if that was available on YouTube, if we looked at that video, we would think you were giving it to Semenko.
Definitely, yeah.
But you were really relenting.
It's so funny looking him in the eye too, and I could just tell. I say, "Okay, I'm going to survive this," because he does not want to be doing this. Not like he's afraid of me or anything. It's just like he does it every other night. And just didn't want to do it tonight. So,
well, I want to take back what I said about Wayne Gretzky being the smartest person on the ice when you guys played the Oilers. Maybe it was you. Maybe
Just
on the ice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit. I mentioned them before about the Red Wings. I just wanted to point out about. It was on this program, I believe, where I talked about the worst team in the league, and I thought it was the Red Wings. And, right after we had that on there, the Red Wings are now I think they've got points in 5 consecutive games. They beat the Boston Bruins. They beat the Vegas Golden Knights. They had a big win against the Ducks. They've come from behind and got some points against the Kings and Anaheim. They played out west and looked pretty good. As well. And I just want to couch that in terms of, we were talking before about how like 1 or 2 players traditionally in hockey don't make a big difference. But when you're trying to find a level of competitiveness, or you need like one player to be a contender, it really can have a major difference. And I brought up Fabre before, and it seems to me, as I'm looking at this team, really the only thing that's different is that Fabre is slotted into their top 6, and Athanasiou seems to have some chemistry with him. And now the Red Wings have 2 lines instead of 1.
Yep.
Now, and it's hard to believe that it's taken them, like, they're certainly not a playoff contender, but it's made them far more competitive than I would have guessed that trade was going to do. They're getting enough goals now, and Athanasiou is who was struggling out of the gate now looks like he's the contributor that he was last season. And all's not perfect in Detroit, but it's better than it was.
Yeah, definitely. No, listen, I agree. When you add that one player that kind of rounds out those top 2 lines, everybody feels a lot better about themselves, right? They feel like they can contribute more. The other part to me that I think is interesting too, that I think in that 5 games, wasn't 4 of those games on the road too, 4 out of 5?
3 of them, yeah.
What I think what happens too, especially when you've got a young team, and Detroit market is a very knowledgeable hockey market too. People know their game. I think maybe sometimes, especially with young players, they're trying too hard to make something happen, right? They're trying to individually be, like show up so that they, it's not being selfish. It's you want to contribute. Your hometown fans, you want to get cheered by your fans, everything. When you go on the road, I think sometimes you dummy the game down a little bit and just do your job. Just play a simple game. I think the whole team then plays a much more kind of frustrating team to play, or be a frustrating team to play against. Right now, you're making simple little plays, chipping it out of the blue line, the inside, you're chipping it in the blue line at the offensive zone to get the puck into the offensive zone. Little plays that make a difference that maybe you're trying to make a big play when you're at home. And then I think when you start winning and you're playing that way, then you say to yourself, wow, this is how we win. The coach can preach it all he wants, but sometimes with a young player, you're still excited. You get into the game. So I think going on the road really helps a young team like that. And they find, okay, this is how we win the hockey game now. This is what I need to do. This is what I need to do individually, so I'll play more. And this is what I need to do as an individual so the team will win. And then now they start to do that at home and realize, this feels good. So let's keep doing this. It lasts for a while. Sometimes now as young players, you get now again, you start playing it and want to do a little bit too much. And the game may drift back a little bit, but I agree with you. Adding another player like that to fill in a role certainly helps. But I just think going on the road for a young team is a big part of it too.
Well, speaking on the road, I watched the Red Wings play against the San Jose Sharks, and both you and I didn't like what we were seeing from the Sharks, and now suddenly they look like they've righted the ship. There's some things that are just inexplicable, in the NHL, like how a team could look so poor for a pretty lengthy period of time, and then suddenly rediscover their mojo, and they're back looking like the team we thought they were. Any explanation for that?
I think a little bit of the same. I just watching the Sharks. My complaint was with them, and I think we talked about Dallas being the same category, where they're two talented lineups. And again, I just felt like they were stepping on the ice and saying, "Okay, we should win because we're talented," and they weren't putting the work into it. Now, over 82 games, I think it was John Muckler said one time over his NHL schedule, if you can get a team to play at its top, 75% of the time, you're doing pretty well. And I guess the problem is for both Dallas and San Jose, their worst hockey was right at the start. So everybody's like, well, Jesus, is this team any good or not? If you have that kind of stretch, a 5 or 10 game stretch in the middle of the season where you're not playing well, it's not as big a deal. But when you start off not playing well, everybody notices, like, okay, is this team good or not? So to me, when I watch San Jose, again, I pick on one guy and I hate to pick on it, but Carlson was typical of the team where it just was, here's this talented guy that he was being lazy. He just wasn't, I wasn't concentrating defensively or whatever. And again, when you're that talented, I don't know what it feels to be that talented, but I do think sometimes maybe you think I can just step on the ice and play. But no matter how talented you are, you still have to put the work in. You have to be paying attention to detail, trusting the process, all those things. And I think they're doing that now.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say what Muckler said. Your team plays well 75% of the time.
Yep, I remember him quoted that. Yeah,
yeah, and we know as people who follow sports that players, athletes have ups and downs, but it's scary if you start to think about that in terms of real life. Because if an athlete has ups and downs, does that mean a neurosurgeon has ups and downs? Does that mean a police officer has ups and downs? Does that mean a school teacher has ups and downs? Well, you don't want to be under the knife on the day when the neurosurgeon.
What is wrong with you? I had a second to think of that. No, it's a very good point, though.
Yeah.
So you've had this discussion before too, talking about like these back-to-back games. Everybody's like, "Oh God, the second night is so it's so tough on a back tonight." I'm thinking like members of the military that are off, carrying around an 80-pound pack in 120-degree temperatures and getting, dodging bombs and everything like that. I mean, they do that every day of the time they're out there. So it's, they really don't care too much about back-to-back deployments.
Yeah. Who's ringing? Is that me or you?
I think that's me. I'm more popular than I thought I was.
Oh, okay. All right.
I get people that ping me just to make it look like I'm popular.
Oh, I got it. Is that a survivor trick that you learned?
Yes. I learned
that. Okay, just checking. Well, the final thing, let's just talk a little bit about TJ Brodie. We haven't talked about that in the middle of a practice. Apparently, he fainted for whatever reason, and he ended up with convulsions. And real scary thing. You ever see anything like that in your time in the NHL?
I don't think I have. I can't recall ever being a part of a game or a practice or something like that happened. And from what I understand with Brodie too, I think the scary part was that he just fainted, but it's when he hit the ice that he went into convulsions, right? Like his head hit the ice, and that's why he had convulsions. But no, I've never seen it like that. I do remember, wasn't it in Detroit? Was it who was the player years ago that would he have a heart attack on the bench? It was many years ago too. Remember that?
A heart attack on the bench.
A heart problem.
Yeah, Yuri Fisher.
Yes, Yuri Fisher. Yeah,
right.
I remember watching that, and I was like, I think I was in the building that night, and that was scary just being there. But I've never been in the game where that's happened.
Yeah, no, the heart issue for sure. Yeah, well, there's been stories. I think a goalie in the NHL history, Bruce Campbell, I think had a heart attack during the game.
Yeah,
I think that seems right.
and I had a client, Ryan Johnson. He had. No, I'm sorry, I apologize. It was his brother Greg, who we've lost, but he was going to sign with the Red Wings, and he ended up had a heart issue, and they wouldn't clear him. So in one case, I guess you had to look and say, well, he had to retire because of it, but they're kind of glad that they caught it. So
yeah. Well, we've run out of time. This time always goes so quickly. I'm Alan. He's Laidlaw. This has been the Laidlaw and Alan Report. We'll see you later this week.
See you on Wednesday, guys.